Testing, test. Testing, testing.
Metro TV, 30 seconds. All right, 30 seconds or not, we're getting started. All right, welcome to the regular meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee on the Efficiency of Boards and Commissions. It's Wednesday, August 6th, 2025, and this meeting is being held pursuant to KRS 61.826 and Council Rule 5A. I am Councilwoman Jennifer Chappell, and I am the chair of this committee, and I am joined somewhere, he'll probably be right back, by my vice chair, Councilman Kevin Bratcher, and today we're joined in chambers by Councilman Lininger, Councilman Reed, Councilman Kramer, and today Councilman Marcus Winkler has an excused absence. I believe that item number 2 is going to be held unless there's anyone. Oh, I am so sorry. And we're also joined virtually by Councilwoman Donna Purvis. And Councilwoman, would you like us to start with your legislation?
Sure.
Okey doke. This is the first time I've ever gotten to read legislation because there's never been any assigned to this board before, so pardon me if I'm not as finessed. So we're going to hear item 20-085-25, an ordinance amending the Louisville Jefferson County Metro Government Code of Ordinances, Section 40.45, to address board member conflicts of interest. And I'll hand it over to you, Councilwoman. Oh, shoot. And we'll need a motion and a second.
Motion.
All right, the item is before us. Councilwoman Purvis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The reason for this legislation is to make sure that individuals that are being appointed to boards are not there for the intended purposes of benefiting from these agencies that they are being appointed to serve as board members. So this is to a this is to avoid any conflict of interest while serving on these particular boards.
Does anyone have any questions? Councilman Kramer?
Thank you. Councilwoman, is it your hope to pass this out today, or were you hoping to discuss it today? I know it's been on the agenda for a while.
Yes, and thank you all for being patient with me while it's been held. It is mine. I would like to get it passed out of committee today. Unless you want to talk to me about it more.
No, not necessarily, ma'am. My understanding was that we were hoping to finish the work of this committee and then have a more comprehensive look at rules and regulations around boards and commissions, and that this would certainly be a part of that conversation.
And this all started a while back, where there was an individual
Right.
that had been nominated to sit on a board, and looking at their line of business, I did question them about being on that board. Would they be seeking funding from this particular board that they were looking to serve on? And their answer was yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so others along with me, we felt like that was a conflict of interest. And we really would like for people to serve on the board with the purpose of giving to and adding something to the board for the agency instead of looking for something in return for serving on these boards.
Councilman Reed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Councilman Purvis, just looking at this, it looks as though it's addressing one specific board. But I'm not seeing anything relative to any of the other boards. Is that by design?
Is it only addressing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board?
Yes.
Okay, well, yep, there you have it.
Okay.
We, like I said, we do have people or had people that were seeking to serve on the board that would also be requesting funding for housing projects.
Any other questions?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Councilwoman, do you know if this is passed at the council level, how will this impact, if at all, the current makeup of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund?
To my knowledge, that was the only person on there. Uh, and this is one of the reasons why I would either probably ask you to send this to old business if it's passed, so that there could be more discussion around it.
That would be amendable. Councilman Kramer?
I remember the conversation that, Councilwoman, that you're referring to. And as I recall, that person either withdrew or was held in committee to the point that the mayor withdrew that name. But that person is not currently serving. I also remember there was a lot of conversation around, again, that we had formed this committee and that this committee was going to be looking at all of the boards and commissions. And the kinds of restrictions that you're proposing here would seem reasonable for more than just the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I think you're absolutely right. I don't think we should. I do think it's a conflict of interest when a person looks for opportunities to serve on boards and commissions where those boards and commissions have a direct impact on their day-to-day profession, whether that's, directing money towards their business or it being in a position to influence regulations that would, have a monetary impact on their business. So I think it's a bigger conversation to be had. I'm not necessarily opposed to the language that's here. It's just I'm hesitant to put forward an ordinance that deals with only one board or commission to deal with a situation that has actually already resolved itself, knowing that I'm going to come back later and have to change the overall ordinance, if that makes sense.
And I agree with you. I was hoping that we would just do this all as one piece. But saying that we're not moving in that direction, I thought that maybe I ought to just go ahead and address this one single-handedly in hopes of us looking at, all of the boards and looking at the language and making sure that the people that are being appointed to these boards, that it won't be for their benefits, that they won't be interested in serving on these boards with their own hidden agendas.
If I may. My hope is that we are moving towards that. Is there a reason, what you suggest that you want to move it now because you get the sense that we might not be moving in that direction with all the boards and commissions? I wasn't aware that anything had changed. It's still my intention to look at regulations that would apply to all the boards and commissions, which would include some of the language that you have in here. I wasn't aware we changed our mind on that.
Yeah, I don't know. And I would agree with you. I would like to address this like globally. But like I said, saying that it doesn't seem that we've moved in that direction. This is why I wanted to go ahead and address this particular board.
And Councilman, I agree with you that we were hoping to have a good action plan coming out of this, and I think that that's something that's worth a big discussion for us. And like you were saying, what's in this legislation, I don't think that I disagree with it, and I'm glad for the discussion, but also maybe I'm challenging you as a colleague to help when we create that plan, how many other boards and commissions,
Absolutely.
will that apply to? Because, I'm saying this, speaking for myself, this is a really big
Sure.
beast that we're wrestling right now, and I hope that we come up with a really fruitful and actionable plan. Yes,
If I may, then, Councilwoman, again, I appreciate that you've gotten this before us. It's absolutely a flag in the ground that says this is gonna come before us. My preference would be that we would keep the flag exactly where it is, knowing that when we finish our work, we're gonna incorporate this into what we're doing. I'm just not sure I'm ready to move on it right now. And if what you would like to hear from me is a commitment to help work towards those changes in our language, that's the reason I'm on this committee. So I am absolutely committed to taking the work that we do here and amending the language around boards and commissions, especially, specifically, as it relates to folks who are signing up to be members. And again, I think this is bigger than just the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and I think it's bigger than just a question about, whether it's a for-profit, not that I'm opposed to profit, but I think this is more than just dollars and cents. I really do believe strongly that if the board or commission that a person is seeking to be on has regulatory authority over the work that they do, to me, that's a clear conflict of interest. And as I understand it, there's nothing in our policies right now that would prevent a person from seeking a position on such a board. I would love to see us change those regulations. And I absolutely will commit to working with whomever it is to try to
Councilman
accomplish that.
Kramer, Councilman Kramer, I would love to work with you on this piece of legislation since this has been my baby so far.
Absolutely.
I would love to join forces with you and work on making this across the board legislation. And I would respect you if you wanted to make a motion to table this until we can include everything, all of the boards and commissions in this legislation.
to my understanding, action is required on this by September 27th, and so it can't be held any longer, so it would need to be withdrawn completely and then reintroduced at another time. Am I understanding correctly?
I'm sorry, this is Sonia Harvard, the clerk. I don't have my computer up all the way. We still have time to act on this, but we can just reintroduce it and it can remain on the agenda. We can put it back on new business and reintroduce it one more time, but a few more times if necessary.
Madam Clerk, can we reintroduce it today, or do we have to wait till the 27th?
No, we can actually go ahead and reintroduce it next Thursday because it goes back on to new business.
And does the reintroduction have to be made by the primary sponsor, or can a member of this committee make a motion at the meeting Thursday to reintroduce it?
I do not think that our rules speak to that. I think that that would be up to you all, and actually we would do it. I would have it on the agenda on Monday when I introduce the tentative agenda.
Well, if Councilwoman Purvis would permit me, I would like to make sure that it gets reintroduced on Thursday, and at that point, I'd like to add my name as a sponsor. Again, with Councilwoman Purvis's, I don't know if permission's the right language, but I certainly would appreciate her approval.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is Sonia Hart, the clerk again, and I'll get that added now. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So I'd make a motion then that we reintroduce this at Thursday night's meeting.
Before we make any motions, if you don't mind holding it, because Councilman Lenninger was in the queue.
Okay.
And also Councilman Reed.
I'm sorry, this is Sonia Harwood one more time. I'm going to leave soon. There is no motion needed for that. You'll just table it, okay? You'll make the motion to table when you're done.
All righty,
Great,
well,
thanks.
Councilman Lenninger, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. And I just had a couple of nuts and bolts questions, especially as we, think about these sorts of things. So we're looking at the truncated 45E to talk about the conflicts of interest. Is there any definition elsewhere that speaks to defining what is a consultant or contractor in this subsection? And further, do we have any language, I guess, that I that we want to think about in terms of cool down, similar to, non-lobbying provisions to ex-members of the body? How long can someone have not been, a contractor before they no longer have a fiduciary responsibility to the firms that they've represented or worked with, or perhaps have, intimated that they would like to help them on the board?
Yeah, Councilman Kramer?
To my knowledge, the way our policies are currently written, there's nothing that says that you have to have been out of that for X amount of time. In the conversations that we've had so far, that has been a piece of the conversation. And very much, interestingly, to your point about lobbying, very much around looking at those kinds of stipulations. I mean, we do require people to be out of the business for a period of time. And I don't think that's unreasonable. So that would certainly be a piece of what I would like to see us talk about.
Okay. And to my first part, do we have any, is there anywhere else that this is defined on what qualifies as a consultant or a contractor in this ordinance?
Again, I would think that's precisely what we're going to get into
Yeah.
when we start getting into
Okay.
You're asking nuts and bolts question, which is spot on. My thought was we would get into those nuts and bolts questions with the county attorney's office once we had finished this work, so that this work could inform us on what direction we thought we wanted to go.
Okay, great, thank you.
But my hope is, and again, with Councilwoman Purvis' help, we will bring forward an ordinance that will change our policies and procedures around boards and commissions.
All right, any more discussion? Then we're open to any sort of motion someone would like to make.
Second?
All right, we've got the motion to table. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for being here. All right. Today we have speakers from the Landmarks Commission, Code Enforcement Board, Planning Commission, and Board of Zoning Adjustment. Thank you all for being here. And because we had that legislation, I feel bad for keeping you here and everyone here a little bit longer. But you're all Louisville Metro employees, so I feel less bad about it. So, all right. I just want to remind everyone the goals of this committee, we're just trying to learn more about your committees and trying to understand what you're up to. This is not in any sort of way that we're trying to punish you. You're not here because you came up with a red flag and we said we've got to figure that out. So just want to let you know that we want to learn more about you. I think we've got some presentations. I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes. Best to do is present for about 6 to 7 minutes max, and then leave a little room for folks to ask questions. So we'll jump into it, and I'm going to start with the Landmarks Commission. So Ms. Starr.
Hello, thank you. Savannah Dar. I'm the Historic Preservation Officer, and I'm in the Office of Planning. And then Cheryl, I do have a PowerPoint. Okay, there it is. So I just wanted to start with a little bit of background. Our Landmarks Commission was established in 1973 specifically for the city government, and then in 1980, a separate commission was established for the county government. And then, of course, in 2003, with the merger, those two commissions were combined into one Landmarks Commission, and LMCO 32.250 regulates the commission and its processes. And then for membership, there are 13 total members. 10 members are appointed by the mayor and reviewed by Metro Council. And I've included those here. We have one architect or landscape architect. We have a historian, an attorney, a real estate broker, a GLI representative, an archaeologist, and 3 at-large positions. We also have one member that is appointed by the Metro Council president. We have one member that is the director of planning and one member that is the director of codes and regs. And our members serve without compensation. And then I just kind of wanted to go over some high-level duties of the Landmarks Commission. Per their ordinance, they are there to promote preservation of the city and county's heritage. They advise local government on policies that affect historic properties. They carry out policy, as I mentioned, set forth in their ordinance, and they review cases. And these are some of their case types. They review appeals of staff or committee decisions on certificates of appropriateness called COAs. Those are kind of our team's sort of permits, if you will. They review economic hardship exemptions. So for example, if a case for demolition is denied, an owner can apply for an economic hardship exemption. They also review local designations, which most of you all are familiar with, whether those are individual landmarks or preservation districts. And lastly, our commissioners do serve on our architectural review committees, or ARCs. There is an ARC for every preservation district, so there's 7 of those, and then there is one for all of our individual landmarks. And those committees do review those certificates of appropriateness that I mentioned. So our Landmarks Commissioners also serve on those committees. There are other subcommittees of the Landmarks Commission. We just started a historical marker program this year, so there is a subcommittee of the Landmarks Commission that does that. And then there's another subcommittee that does technical review during a designation process. And I try to keep my presentation very short, so that's my last slide.
That might be the shortest PowerPoint I've ever seen in my nearly 3 years on Metro Council. What was it, like two slides? I'm trying to pull up right now your meeting minutes, and I'm just wondering, can you kind of go over, of course, I'm pulling it up right now, but can you kind of go over what are some of the items that you all have recently been discussing?
Yeah. So at our last meeting, we discussed, as staff put out grants, we apply for grants to do more work with the commission and to update our regulations. And so at our last meeting, they reviewed some recommendations from a consultant that we hired to take a look at our ordinance and provide us some feedback on some big key things that we felt like we were kind of behind on and needed some updating on. So that's what they did at the last meeting. Before that, they reviewed a request for the Chickasaw Preservation District, which will be coming to Metro Council soon. They also are part of the review process for National Register nominations. That process is actually administered at the state level by the Kentucky Heritage Council, and we, as a local body, get to have a review of those as well, even though they don't really make a final decision. It's kind of just a recommendation, if you will.
Sure. And I believe we just voted on that Chickasaw plan, if I'm correct.
It's going to Planning and Zoning Committee
Yeah, okay.
in a couple weeks.
Councilman Reed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Savannah. Question, help me through the process here. When a property has been landmarked properly, who follows up with that the property owner to make sure that it's being maintained to whatever specific guidelines as required, either at the local level or the state level? Is that somebody on your staff, or is it somebody in codes and regs, and how often does it happen?
So we do have zoning enforcement officers that specifically review for violations of our landmarks ordinance, and that's usually complaint-based. So 311 complaints to get our zoning enforcement officers out there to review that property. I mentioned that we hired a consultant to look at our regulations, and we don't currently have regulations that require someone to upkeep a property to a certain level. That's really codes and regulations, property maintenance regulations. But something we've been hearing a lot about are requests from the public for us to look into possibly creating guidelines of what we call demolition by neglect. So somebody is letting their property go for so long that it becomes a demolition just because of years of neglect. And so those are some of those regulations and recommendations we've been looking at from a consultant who did nationwide research. So we don't currently have standards that a property owner has to maintain their property toward. They generally come to us if they are requesting to make changes to their property. So say they want to replace their windows or their siding, then they come to us and we have a set guidelines that we review that with.
Okay, what about the state? Does the state have a similar oversight authority, or?
It depends. So if the property is also listed in the National Register, The state can have some say in what happens there, but if it's just locally designated, then it just goes.
So on a national register, is that the federal government that would do the inspection? And is that common or not?
Not very common. They will do that with National Historic Landmarks.
Right.
But just properties that are on the National Register, they tend to delegate most authority to the state level.
Okay. I'm not advocating for, you know, the long arm of the local government to make sure that somebody's doing something that very costly and expensive and putting an onus on property owners. But at the same time, I do think that there's a fine line in there to where if somebody's allowing a property that's been landmarked to fall into huge disrepair, that we should have some sort of recourse.
And that's a lot of what we've been hearing, and I'm happy to share those findings from that Terracon, if you would like, on what
Please,
they
thank
found
you.
nationwide about those sorts of policies.
Thank you.
Councilman Leninger?
As I represent two historic preservation districts, let me say that I disagree with Councilman Reed. I do want the long arm of local government to be able to step in when properties are not being held up to the historic preservation standards. You know, we say in Old Louisville, you know, nobody lives here by accident. We live here because we love the historic preservation district. And demolition by neglect is a serious problem in the Old Louisville Historic Preservation District, and I know exactly why people are talking to you about that. So I just wanted on the record for anyone in District 6 that's watching this meeting, I absolutely want to stop demolition by neglect in our historic preservation districts, and I would love for us to have regulations that would help us with that. Thank you.
Councilman Bratcher?
I missed your introduction. You work for the Landmark Group?
Yes.
You're an employee?
Yes, at the Office of Planning.
Do you report to who?
Brian Davis.
Okay. And so it being members serve without compensation, there's probably a lot of people that like to be on that board, I bet.
Sometimes, yes.
It seems like, you know, my family worked on like the Kentucky Railway Museum years ago before it left Louisville, and my dad would drag me to these historical preservation groups around town, and I didn't appreciate it then, but I sure do now, and I wish I'd have paid more attention. And it's just, you know, our history is so important to not just tear it down and build the next building. So what would you say the last, and not to get, you know, deep in it, not to be negative, what was your last confrontation in your group?
I will say that individual landmark designations can be pretty contentious. We have an ordinance that allows for the citizens to come together with a petition process to request that something be designated as a landmark, and sometimes that is against the owner's wishes because the current owner is wanting to tear it down or whatever their plans may be. And so those can get pretty contentious for us. And back in 2019, Metro Council asked us to look at our ordinance and do nationwide research, and a lot of programs like ours across the country have that provision so that citizens have a say in their history and their preservation.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Could you talk about the 109, 103 board, 10-something commission?
Is that the meeting we had the other night?
Yes.
Okay.
And how that relates to your work and anything with the Landmarks Commission, because if my colleagues check their emails, this should kind of spark something for them, right?
Okay. I'm going to get really high level on you all here. So there's the National Historic Preservation Act that was done in the 1960s. And as part of that, it regulates the federal government. And when the federal government spends their money, there is a review that has to be done that's called Section 106. The Section 106 review basically looks at a federal undertaking, which is what they call it if they're spending their money, and are there cultural resources that are going to be impacted? And that includes above ground, so buildings, neighborhoods, et cetera, and that also includes below ground, so archaeological sites. And Louisville Metro is a certified local government, and that is a designation from the federal government. We have a Landmarks Commission, we have a Landmarks Ordinance, and we follow these regulations set forth by the federal government. So we are called a certified local government, or a CLG. And so when you have a CLG on staff and you have a trained professional, me and some of my team members, who take the 106 training from the federal government, we do those reviews in-house. So for example, the Office of Housing gets a lot of HUD funds every year that they then grant back out again through their various programs. And so we have an internal review process to look at those. Is this change that someone is making to this house, is this new development that housing is giving funding out for, et cetera, going to impact those cultural resources? And what we call that document, that guiding document that drives us through this process, is called a programmatic agreement. And it lays out basically the process we have to follow from application to end stage. And you all got an email from me back in June about a programmatic agreement is being updated. It's updated every 5 years now with this Kentucky Heritage Council. And so it was an invitation for you all to become consulting parties if you wished to do that. It is not a requirement, it is just an invitation. This document governs Metro-wide because anyone, as long as they meet the Office of Housing's program requirements, can receive their funding. And so that's why it's a very broad group and all council members are invited. And so we just had our consulting parties meeting, which Councilwoman Chapel attended, where we talked about what this document is and what our proposed changes are and what the process is, and really tried to explain that to a lot of folks, because we also invited neighborhood associations. We also invited those nonprofits that do receive that funding from the Office of Housing, so Family Scholar House, et cetera. And so you all will actually be getting an email from me this week that summarizes that meeting, sends you those documents again so you can take a look. Comment is not required, but if you would like to make comments and review that. So that's part of my role in Metro.
I think you did a really great job. You did a fantastic job on that, but I understand if some people are like, why did she just ask that question and what is she talking about? Councilman Reed.
Just very quickly, how often do you meet?
The Landmarks Commission?
Yes.
Meets once a month on the third Thursday.
Okay, do you normally have a quorum?
Most months, summers can be a little tricky, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's all. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Oh, Councilman Kramer.
Thank you. Length of term?
It's standard, Althea takes care of that. It's the standard that follows the ordinance at 3 years.
Okay, that's what I was asking, is what does the ordinance say? So,
Yeah.
Okay, so, and are you staggered, or is everybody up at the same time?
It's staggered.
Okay, good. There was a case, it's been a couple years back, where a person had a property and they decided, it was historic, and they deliberately, so that was an issue. But there's a fine line. I think historic preservation is important. That's where my degree is in history. But I also appreciate that we're in a state that recognizes and appreciates people have rights to their property. We also recognize and appreciate that properties can have been passed down from generation to generation, and the generations who built the property and started taking care of it had the resources, and that the current generation may not. And we just would want to, again, there's a fine line there between someone is deliberately letting it go and someone is doing the best they can, they just can't afford it because it's an old house. And it is a taking of somebody's property if the government steps in and says, you can't sell it in any way except as this piece of property, which is, the value of is severely diminished because of the shape of the property. So again, I know that's one of the things that you guys are looking at. I'm sure when you come out with your policy that we will see some indication that that was a part of the conversation, so.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for your work.
And with that, great job. Well, thank you so very much. You all do important work, and Councilman Bracher, it's not only contentious at the commission, but also here on council sometimes. But thank you for all you do, and we'll look in our emails for that 106 board.
There it is.
Yes, 106
Thank you all.
document. Next up, we're going to have the Code Enforcement Board. Sorry, Brian. And we're going to have the Assistant Director, Odell Henderson, from Code Enforcement. And I'm so sorry I did not give my little stats from the last one, but this is a board that is under statutory authority with the state as well as Louisville Metro. They meet every Friday, and this board receives $79,900 from the budget. They don't generate any revenue, and they have a maximum of 5 members, and I don't believe they have any vacancies. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Good afternoon. How you doing? My name is Odell Henderson. I'm Assistant Director of Code and Regulations. I oversee the Code Board in Louisville Metro Government, and the Code Board was implemented in January, approximately 2006, became a full board in December 2016. We hear various appeals from constituents in the community concerning high grass, illegal parked cars, street racing, things of that nature is what our board hears appeals from dealing with that. We meet every Friday at 8:30, except for Fridays before holidays and during Derby week. We have approximately 5 board members. Their term staggers, and it's a 3-year term as well. And in our department, we have code enforcement officers that are in the community, and they cite our citizens in the city and let them know what the violations are and give them a period of time to fix their issues. If we return, and we give them a date also to when their repairs should be done. If not, we give them a citation. If that citizen wants to appeal that, then they come to the Code Board with evidence that they are in compliance, or a hearing is held and we let them know that they're not in compliance. We give them a conditional discharge if some of the items are done, and if not, we also uphold their penalties. That's what our Code Board basically deals with.
I see it, and I'll get to you just one second, Councilman. I believe earlier in our meetings, we had Director Price come, and I believe he was here talking about the Building Code Board of Appeals, which also is a codes and regs board, but I believe he said that that board hasn't had any work in 5 years, or no one's appealed anything. And so I was just kind of curious, what's the difference between that board and this board? Because it seems like people can still do appeals, but I mean, I guess that one is building code, but why couldn't that just be rolled into code enforcement?
Well, our Code Board, we reflect on Chapter 156, which is also called the Maintenance Code or the Code. It addresses how citizens should have their homes established. We deal with gutters, soffits, chimneys, windows. That deals with residential properties. That's what our board deals with for customers to come to and appeal their violations and citations. You are correct about the other board not meeting. That is correct. I'm not familiar with that board. I don't oversee that board, but you are correct what you just said about Director Price saying that.
Sure, it just seems like expanding the capacity of this board and then also maybe dissolving that one, but maybe that's a to-do list item for us. Can you speak to how many appeals you've had in the last year for?
It varies, ma'am. I don't have that exact number, but I'll be more than glad to get that number and send it to the committee of how many appeals we had in the last fiscal year.
Sure, yeah, maybe even the last few, if
ma'am.
possible, just so we
Okay.
can kind of see where the trend is going. Councilman
ma'am.
Reed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that was going to be the question that I asked, what's your backlog? Are you backlogged? Do you have, you meet weekly, so I'm assuming that there's a good reason to be meeting weekly. So do you have multiple cases that you listen to on a weekly basis? Do you have enough people on your board to listen to these various appeals?
Our average docket right now is approximately about 125 cases on our docket per week. Those vary because before the board starts, we have a pre-conference hearing that people can come in and believe that they have met the criteria, that they have made the repairs at their homes. So they come in and talk with the code enforcement officers, and they bring their evidence to the code board. And if the evidence shows that they are in compliance, then it's conditionally discharged, and that case goes away. So that our case, say we may put on 125 cases on our docket, we could possibly conditionally discharge 50 of those before the hearing even starts. Mm-hmm. We started at 8:30 because we wanted to get more cases on our docket because we wanted to decrease that time a person had to wait from the time they're receiving the citation before they could appeal it. And yes, we do have enough persons on our board to hear those compliance, to hear those cases as well. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I would be interested in knowing how many cases you've looked at, as Councilman Chappell said a minute ago, over the past year.
Okay,
maybe
well,
the prior fiscal year.
I wrote down 5 years, or you want just the fiscal year, last 5 years? Okay, I can do that.
Sure, please, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Did I just hear you correctly in saying 125 cases a week?
Yes, ma'am.
How long are you all there?
Oh, we're there from 8:30 maybe till 12 o'clock. It varies. We go as long as we have to go to get the cases done.
So it looks like each person gets $500 per meeting, and I'm not crunching that, so that about $80,000 that this board gets in our budget, that's probably all towards their compensation?
No, ma'am. It's, the citations vary in cost, okay? There's not a standard cost, just all citations are $500. They vary in cost. So if a person is fined $500, let's use that number, and they come in and the board sees that they have made efforts to make the repairs, they could conditionally discharge $250 of that fine, leaving $250 as long as they are not receive a citation within the following year. So all that money is not collected, it can be conditionally discharged as well.
Sure. You bring up a good point. I was asking more, you get money in the budget, and I was wondering what you spend that on, and that might be, I'm going to crunch the numbers, it might be the compensation that board members receive, rightfully so, for being a board member and showing up. But you bring up another good point. Could you get us the numbers maybe for the past year on how many, what the amount of fines is for each year? So like, how many of those $250 fines are you putting out, and are we collecting on those? That would be really helpful information. Councilman Bratcher?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm looking at a web page here. It says Department of Codes and Regulations, about the Code Enforcement Board. Is that you?
Say that again, sir.
It's called the Department of Codes and Regulations, and I'm on a page called About the Code Enforcement Board, and it says Aaron Cole, Chris Wantland.
Pamela Watland, yes, Nyla Falone, yes, that's the Code Enforcement Board, sir.
So those four are the Code Board members.
Yes.
And it goes up here and it says the Code Enforcement Board hears appeals for the following citations, violation notices. It says HVAC, building, electrical. I thought that's what the chairwoman said, and I remember that we had, I'm really confused here. We had a Richard Price, right?
Yes,
Do
sir.
you work for him?
Yes, sir, I do.
Yeah. He had a group here that came, and they are the Codes Board for buildings, buildings, like electric, HVAC. I'm just wondering if there's a mistake on this website or whatever. And they said they haven't had a violation in years because, number one, the violations don't put a dent in a contractor's, cost sheet, or number two, they settle it on the spot. So
board
it's really weird, really odd here.
The board that I oversee, that I've been dealing with for the last year, we deal with animal control cases,
Yeah.
speed racing, and we deal with Chapter 156 code violations. That's what our board deals with.
Well, your website says electrical, HVAC, building, false alarms.
Signs, smoking, solid waste, booking fees, I see that, sir. But the code board that I oversee, we deal with animal control, we deal with Chapter 156 violations, and speed racing.
Well, let me ask you this. So animal control, say there's a dog that's bothering the neighborhood, and
Yes, sir.
and the code enforcement officer writes them up, the owner of the dog,
Animal control officer will, sir, yes.
or animal control officer, and and then the person says, well, that dog's not doing that, blah, 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 comes to your board and
Yes, sir.
says, this is why I should not have to pay this fine. And then you decide yes or no.
The hearing, yes, sir, the hearing officer decides, yes, sir.
That's pretty wild.
You learn something new every day.
They have to bring the evidence that if, say, an animal control case comes in, a person has complained that the dog has been loose. That owner has to, the person has to show that on certain days this happened, was the dog loose or not? Do you have evidence that says the dog was loose or the dog wasn't loose? Based upon the evidence, a ruling is made on that case by the hearing officer.
But just to be clear one more time,
Yes, sir?
if there's an HVAC problem
Yes, sir?
with, I guess you're putting in an HVAC and you have too many angles, I think there's a limit of 90-degree angles or whatnot, you would not come to your board.
Correct, sir.
It would go to what board?
The building whole board that she just spoke of, with that, we do not deal with HVAC.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilman Kramer?
Thank you. So early in the discussion, you asked if there was a difference between this board and a different board, right? And now we're talking about the Code Enforcement Board.
Yes, sir.
The Code Enforcement Board deals with a wide range of things. So are we talking about the board that we're talking about right now? Is this the Code Enforcement Board? Or is this a board that deals with specifically things that go through codes and regulations? Because, for example, the Code Enforcement Board deals with noise ordinance. A person can say, I didn't violate the noise ordinance. It goes to the Code Enforcement Board. We just did a metals ordinance, and they can if a license is denied them, they can go to the Code Enforcement Board and appeal it. So the Code Enforcement Board is much broader than just properties. It's not that kind of limited. And so I'm curious, I want to make sure as we're talking about this, we keep throwing that term Code Enforcement Board. That's a different animal, unless it's not.
No,
And if it's not a different animal, then I need to know what we're doing, because I think it's a different thing.
Okay, let me explain. I've been dealing with the code board for the last year, as I spoke of.
That's a code board, though.
Code board.
Yeah, and, okay.
The code board that I have been overseeing and been attending every Friday, we've only dealt with animal control cases, speed racing, and property maintenance. It deals with Chapter 156 code enforcement. That's what I've been dealing with for the last 12 months on the code board.
So I don't know which agency the Code Enforcement Board falls under.
It was my understanding that the other board you spoke of, ma'am, has not met in a while because, as you said, no one has appealed that. We don't do the same work that the other board you talked about, building code board. We don't do that same work.
Right. And I don't believe they've met.
No, sir, my
And
understanding they have not met.
There's some consternation among some of us because we know there are ordinances that should be enforced and we're not enforcing them, and they're not going before the Code Enforcement Board at all.
Okay.
And again, I'll speak specifically to the noise ordinance. The noise ordinance violations were designed, we wrote the ordinance so that noise ordinance violations would go to the Code Enforcement Board instead of going into the courts. We did that because the courts notoriously don't see violations of that kind of ordinance as something worthy of their attention. So we sent those to the Code Enforcement Board. The police then have to cite someone for a noise violation. That person can either pay the fine, or instead of going to court, they would go to the Code Enforcement Board. What we're finding is that people are not going to the Code Enforcement Board, and that's largely because they're not being fined. But I think it's a different board than the one you're talking about.
I can only speak on the board that deals with
Right.
animal control, speed racing, and Chapter 156 maintenance code. That's what I oversee, the code
Speed
board.
racing, you would think, would be the same.
So I just want to be very clear. Today, we're talking about the Code Enforcement Board. Louisville Metro shall have a Code Enforcement Board, which shall be comprised of no fewer than 5 members, blah, blah, blah. Like, I have it all written here. Right now, we are talking about the Code Enforcement Board.
Yeah, then this board is broader than the way you're describing it. It was.
Assistant Director
we-
Henderson, are you here to speak about the Code
Yeah.
Enforcement Board?
No, I'm here to speak about the code board that deals with animal control,
Yeah, we've got a
speed
problem.
racing, and Chapter 156 maintenance violations. I don't, as I said, ma'am, I have not been involved with the list that you spoke of that's on the website. I'm looking at it right now. Animal, electric, HVAC. I've only dealt with animal control, speed racing, and Chapter 156 violations. That's all I can speak on.
With that, about the signs, I have a sign. There was recently a blinking sign in my district from a business, and someone from Codes and Regs went out in the evening and they looked at it. That was all fine and dandy, but say they were issued a citation and that person wanted to appeal that citation, who are they going in front of?
Per this website,
It's you.
it would be the Code Enforcement Board, but none of those cases have been brought to the board that I oversee.
Yeah. We'll have to do some digging, so I think that we
I'd be more than
found,
glad to address it, but in our code board, but I have not had anything other than, as I spoke of, the 3 items I've dealt with in the last 12 months.
sure, yeah. You're doing your job. I think that we're just, what?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing this to light. I think we need to get the county attorney to weigh in on this. I mean, clearly there is a disconnect between what's showing up and what the ordinance was designed to accomplish. And so the Code Enforcement Board is not functioning the way that we originally intended. That's not to say that it's anything you've done, Odell. I mean, Mr. Henderson, I'm sorry. That's not to say it's that, you're doing it wrong. It's just to say, when we created this X number of years ago, we had a vision for what this would do, and it's not doing what the vision was. So again, we just need to, again, I appreciate you bringing it up. Thank you for bringing it to light.
There was my understanding that there was a building code board at one time. That board, my understanding, has not met in years. Why,
Right.
I don't know, ma'am. I could not tell you. But what I've been involved with since, as I stated, are the 3 types of cases that are brought to the board that I oversee and I attend every Friday.
Absolutely, and we'll look into it, but I just, when I pulled you up here, I was like, this is deja vu. Did we make a mistake in inviting you all twice? And so I just think that we found a little bit of a redundancy here, so it's exactly why we're doing this, so thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. I don't know if I've been any help or caused more
I
problems.
think so,
but,
yeah, yeah,
I can only speak on what I know.
sure. You've done nothing wrong. You've done nothing wrong, yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for your time. All right.
Thank you. And next, we'll just have Mr. Brian Davis come up in a familiar seat. And you will be speaking on the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Adjustment. I know that these are 2 hot boards. Committee members, do we have a preference on which one they start with? Okay, well, we're going to start with the Planning Commission, and this is under Kentucky and Louisville Authority. They are required to meet 6 times a year. They are compensated $100 per hearing, and they receive fees from applications, so they do generate revenue. There's a maximum of 10 members, and I will hand it over to Director Davis.
All right, good afternoon. Brian Davis, Louisville Metro Office of Planning. Here to talk a little bit about the Planning Commission, answer any questions that you may have. As stated, the membership of the Planning Commission is driven by KRS Section 100.137, Item 2. In that it says that we should have 10 total members. That membership consists of the mayor or of the consolidated local government or their designee, the director of public works of the consolidated local government or designee, and then 8 members that are appointed by the mayor. And then, as you all know, you see those appointments come over to you prior to their being activated. There is a caveat in there about the 8 members. It says no more than 4 of the 8 shall have a direct financial interest in the land development and construction industry. That is written into the language in KRS 100. They do serve 3-year terms. Members must meet continuing education requirements, which is actually just changed. It's now 8 hours every 4 years. And if you're wondering why the difference between 4 years and 3 years, the other 119 counties in the state, their commissioners serve 4-year terms, but for whatever reason in KRS 100, ours serve 3. And so they did not make that distinction in the new training requirements. But we're going to hold our people to 8 hours every 3 years. As you previously stated, they are compensated $100 per public hearing. That is established in a Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances. This does not include subcommittee meetings. And so of the 10 members, the Planning Commission has these subcommittees. Each year, the chair of the Planning Commission elects a chair, and then the chair designates people to be on the different subcommittees. And so the four primary subcommittees of the Planning Commission include the Development Review Committee, the Land Development and Transportation Committee, the Planning Committee, and then the Policy and Procedures Committee. And I'm happy to answer any questions about those later on if you have any questions. As far as the duties of the Planning Commission, again, these are laid out in KRS 100. The Planning Commission is responsible for preparing and updating and adopting the comprehensive plan. They make recommendations to legislative bodies with zoning authority on land use regulations. So when you think about the Land Development Code and the rules that we apply to the different development plans that we review, the Planning Commission reviews those recommended changes for those, and then the legislative bodies have final authority over those. The Planning Commission does have final say over land subdivision regulations. So Chapter 7 of the Land Development Code is our subdivision section. Any changes that are made to that section, those are final at the Planning Commission level. Those do not go on to the legislative bodies. Some of you are very familiar with the fact that the Planning Commission makes recommendations to legislative bodies on zoning map amendments. So when those come through, Planning Commission conducts a public hearing. They make a recommendation to the legislative body with zoning authority who has final say over those. And then the Planning Commission also approves and denies other applications such as waivers, development plans, and things like that. Typically, the Planning Commission meets on the first and third Thursdays of the month. That can deviate some depending on holidays, Derby, recently JCPS spring break, and things like that. If there's a fifth Thursday of the month, we will typically have a Planning Commission meeting on those days as well. They can also hold special hearings as needed. There are processes for where citizens can request to have special evening hearings by petition. So when we receive those petitions, then the Planning Commission will schedule a special hearing to have those public hearings. The average Planning Commission public hearing lasts about 3 hours and 45 minutes. That was in the 2024. And then DRC and LD&T, so two of the subcommittees, they meet bi-weekly. The other subcommittees meet as needed. That's all I have, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Sure, thank you so very much. Just out of curiosity, how much money and fees were collected by the Planning Commission in the last, I don't know, calendar year or fiscal year?
So in the last calendar year, 2024, I do have that information. The Office of Planning collected a little over $1 million in fees. That includes all the application fees that we collect. We also oversee the collection of short-term rental license registrations. And so there's a pretty hefty number in there that makes up that little over $1 million.
Looking at the makeup of this board, 5 out of 10 of the members, I believe, are in real estate. 5 out of 10 of those members live in R4 zoning, and I believe 7 out of 10 live in suburban areas. And I think one of them at least lives in Indiana, which I believe has to serve because of her role as the Director of Public Works. But I was wondering, other boards like we just saw with the Landmarks Commission has an archaeologist, a historian, they're very appointed roles. Do you think that should be applied to this commission? And do you think it's problematic that half of the board has a background in real estate?
Again, KRS 100 says 4 of the 8 citizen members have an interest or a background in construction. I think it helps to some degree, but I think it's also important to have other people on the Planning Commission because we're making decisions that impact the citizens of our community, and kind of like a jury, you want people that are have a similar nature or whatever that's reflective of your community. And so I think it is important to try and find an appropriate balance between your suburban and the urban areas and racial mix and male and female and everything else. And so that is something that is taken into consideration whenever appointments are being made to the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Adjustments as well.
Yeah, I think that especially, I mean, or oftentimes that kind of suburban-urban disconnect really comes into play. Councilman Reed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for coming, Brian. Question, you hear a lot from people that are trying to locate here, developers, et cetera, people wanting to start a business, that Louisville has too much red tape. I've never been in that position where I've had to try to start a new business here, but I hear that a lot. So I'm wondering, does the Planning Commission proactively make recommendations to your group in planning and design for potential changes that would make the process, their process, a little bit quicker?
So, so the Policy and Procedures Committee, which is one of the subcommittees of the Planning Commission, from time to time, they'll explore things like meeting time limits, or talk about the process. Like, for instance, both the Land Development Code and our policy and the Planning Commission policies talk about different things as far as like what the what process an application has to go through in order to get to some sort of decision. Yes, from like I said, they will have some recommendations, and so the Planning Commission may pass a resolution similar to like what Metro Council does, asking us to explore a certain topic, and so we will dive into that and come back to them. Very similar to how you all, if you see there's a need in the Land Development Code or a certain process, we'll explore and see what other cities around the state and the nation do, and see if there are ways to kind of fix the process, if you would. Just this year, we did hire a consultant to do an evaluation of the development review process, and so that report was given to us in May, and so we're in the process of reviewing that and trying to determine what items from that report we would like to explore implementing again, and to kind of fix some of that red tape and to kind of shake that stigma that the city does have in terms of like it takes a long time to get things done in Louisville.
Thank you.
See, this is maybe a little bit more in the weeds of things, but recently in a meeting, one of the commissioners abstained from a vote. When we abstain from a vote, we have to explain why, because it's different than voting present. And I found out that that is not required to state why they are abstaining. And I feel like for transparency's sake, that's pretty opaque. And so, but I'm also understanding that's not something that we control, that's something that the committee of the commission controls. So this committee doesn't control what the committee of the commission controls. Do I have that right?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, the Planning Commission controls their subcommittees through their policies and procedures. But like you said, if someone wants to recuse themselves from a case, or if they want to abstain from a vote, they don't necessarily have to state why. And typically, with the guidance that we get from the county attorney representatives who are at all of our meetings, they don't require the member to say why they're abstaining or why they're recusing from a vote, and they just allow that to happen. And with an abstention, it doesn't impact a quorum, because they still count as being there towards the quorum. But then, of course, the vote is just like kind of off to the side with the yes and the no votes. But then, with a recusal, obviously, if someone recuses themselves, they leave the room. They don't participate in the hearing at all, and so they don't count as being in attendance for that case.
Yeah, seems convoluted, but thank you for that clarification. Councilman Bratcher.
I haven't got an answer to this question, so I'm just going to be persistent. So when there is this isn't going into the architecture of this committee, it's more of the procedure. But since I got you here, when a development or whatever, what is it you call that passes? Is it a case?
Yeah, a case, docket, whatever, yeah.
Yeah. So if a case is passed by Planning Commission, what is the minimum yes votes it needs?
A majority of those present that vote. And you asked the question the other day, and we had moved on to another topic before I could state something. In theory, if there was an item and you had one yes vote and 9 abstentions, then the 1-0 would win, it would pass. The only times we really see anything like that is if you have subcommittee minutes that have to go to planning commission for approval, then usually the 5 who aren't on the committee will abstain from that vote. And then if one of the committee members was absent, then you may get some weird votes that way. But otherwise, with any type of case, it's just a majority of the people who vote. Landmarks Commission, on some types of designations is different. You actually have to have a majority of the number of members that you have on the Landmarks Commission, because we've had cases there before where, no, it's 13 members, right? Yeah, I'm one of the members, you think I know. So it's like Landmarks has 13 members, and we had a case, and the final vote was 6-2, but because they didn't have 7 votes, it did not pass because
Well,
their
see, that's
bylaws
what I
state
thought.
that. But with zoning matters, it's zoning matters at Planning Commission in Boza, it's not the same way. It's just a majority of the people that are voting.
Where is that written down?
I would have to check and see if that is KRS or if it's in the policies. I'd have to check on that.
So it does say here that 5 members of the commission shall constitute a quorum.
That is correct.
For the transaction of business. So what you're saying is if 5 people showed up, it would only take a majority of those 5, so it would only take 3 to pass any legislation, 3 out of 10 members.
Out of 10 members, but yeah, 5 are present, we have a quorum, then 3-2 would be something. And I know this year we've had something come over with a 3-2 vote, so it happens from time to time. Typically, we have 8 or 9 members that are present at a meeting. It's very uncommon to have a 5. Really, the only time we may have a 5 is if it's a special night hearing and we have trouble getting a quorum together for that night hearing, but usually, like the normal meetings, we'll have 8, 9, or 10 present.
Well, so how many people can vote? What's the max? There's 10 members.
There's 10 members.
Can
yes.
all 10 vote, yes or no?
Yeah, yes.
Or abstain or vote present? Mm-hmm. So now going back to what the chairwoman said, 5 members shows up, hypothetically, I guess that's the word, hypothetically. 5 show up, 4 abstain, 1 votes yes, it passes.
Yeah, hypothetically, yes.
Crazy. Our time is, but anybody have any questions? I saw your finger going towards
Yeah,
me.
I had a couple questions.
Sure, go ahead,
Hoping I
Councilman
could
Kramer.
ask.
As long as you all are fine with staying.
Councilman Bratcher, to your point, worst case scenario, you have the 4 guys or 4 persons who are from the real estate world show up with the 5th person. The 1 person who's not in the real estate world abstains. You have 4 real estate people making a decision about a real estate development. Not saying that happens, but that is a piece of it. So my question, you've mentioned a couple of times now that the state says there can be no more than 4 from the real estate industry. Can municipalities change that number? We can't make it go up because the state says it can't be more than 4. But does it have to be 4? Can we say 2?
It just says no more than 4 of the 8 citizen members. So,
Right.
at
So-
times
and then
it's
we
been
appoint them,
2.
so
Right.
we may or may not appoint them, right? I get that.
Correct.
But can we change, can we say in our policies, not just when it comes before us, we're going to vote, but can we say in our policies that the mayor will only send over 2?
I'd have to get clarification from the county attorney's office.
If you don't mind,
Yeah,
check on
no,
that for me.
absolutely,
Thank
yeah.
you. I'd appreciate it. My second question is, planning commission is planning versus responding. I am becoming more and more aware of the way that development is planned in Metro Louisville. My district has shifted, and so I'm seeing development in ways I hadn't before. When a developer comes in and says, I want to develop this piece of property, they come in with a plan, and that's what gets approved. Another developer comes in and says, I want to develop this piece of property, which may or may not be contiguous, and that gets approved. There may or may not be an appropriate or best traffic pattern, but we don't look at traffic patterns at all. We just look at this developer wants to do this, we approved it. This developer wants to do this, we approved it. When do we ever have a chance to step back and say, here is the most appropriate traffic pattern in this particular area as it continues to grow and develop.
So,
When do we do that? And when does a citizen have an opportunity to go in and say, I want to have some influence over how the transportation is being done? Because it's not being planned, right? As I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not being planned. We're not sitting down as a city saying, this is how the road should go. We're simply, a developer says, I want to put this here, and we say, okay, another developer, and the next thing you know, we've got roads that we may or may not have intended.
Right, so anytime the development plan is filed, it gets reviewed by Public Works. If it's on or near a state road, then KYTC will review that. We also get input from the fire departments around the community because, they're concerned about the load capacity and the width and things like that for the streets. As far as like traffic patterns and things like that, depending on the projected number of trips during peak hours that the proposal is producing, it may require a traffic study. So when they're required to do a traffic study, Public Works will determine, okay, this is the location. We're concerned about, these intersections or these stretches of roads. And so the engineers at Public Works make that determination to look and see where they feel that the traffic is going to go. And so
I don't mean to cut you short, but
No, it's
again,
fine.
everything you're describing is specific to a parcel or a development that a developer is bringing forward.
But-
I'm talking about a big piece of property
Sure.
that may have 5 or 6 different developers that there is, from a planning perspective, it would make more sense that a road would traverse that particular parcel in a certain way. But we don't ever have that conversation because we don't make that plan. We let the developers come in and say, I want to develop this parcel, and as I develop this parcel, this is what I need. And in some cases, the parcel they're developing is at a great distance from the road they're connecting to, and they want a straight shot road that connects from where they are to where they want to connect, and they're going across areas that will later be developed by somebody else, and that road may not be at all appropriate, but we don't plan it. We let the developers decide what works for the and it's not their fault. If I'm developing property, I'm gonna draw up a development plan that works best for me. Of course they are, right? Please, I'm not slamming developers here. I'm simply saying, as the planning commission, when do we ever get involved in actually planning versus responding to what developers bring us? Or do we ever?
At the planning commission level, so we will look at like stubs and street frontages that a property that's being developed or a large parcel has, and we'll know, okay, because there's a road that is across this street over here, you need to line up your roads to meet that, or there's a stub here, you have to connect to that. As far as like long-range planning efforts go, I mean, a lot of that rests on Public Works, on KIPTA, and on the state. In order to identify corridors and things like that where future roads are going to go.
But that's not what they do. So my next question is, like, in all seriousness, when in the process does a citizen have an opportunity, or another property owner have an opportunity to step in and who do they speak to and say the current configuration is inappropriate for future development? Where do we go to appeal that and to change that so that road configuration can be adjusted?
Right.
Where does if it's not the planning commission, where do we go? Where does someone go?
Well, I mean, ultimately, my answer will be to Public Works and the new Department of Transportation. That is the
new
authority
Department of
that's going to
Transportation.
oversee, all the road projects. And so if there are areas where there are concerns about traffic and road alignments and widths and things like that, then ultimately that would be the best source, because they're, one of the things that the Department of Transportation is tasked with doing is to identify project needs and find ways to make projects happen. And so, I think Director Kern would love to have a conversation about that and what their intentions are from the DOT.
Okay, so if it's a road that's already in, will they entertain a conversation about redirecting that road? Again, it's not developed.
Right.
I'm
no.
talking about a development back here, The area in between is not developed.
Yeah, no, that's something that
That's
we would look
the
at and
Department of
consider, yeah,
Transportation.
because we're looking at the road geometry and the site configurations and things like that, and so, yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon to, yeah, this road's over here now, but we need to move it down 100 feet because of whatever, and
And that's the Department of Transportation? Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Councilman Reed.
So we had, I think, at a Planning and Zoning Committee meeting, we had a special discussion about this. Was it with you, Brian? Okay. But I think that was before we had established this new Department of Transportation.
see, that meeting, when did we have that one? It was right around the time of that being formed. And we've known about the DOT for several months, but yeah, that conversation that we had, yeah, I mean, so Beth Stuber, who was with the Office of Planning, is now with the DOT. She was there, and Director Kern was here that day as well. I
Right,
believe, but yeah.
right. So it would seem to me as though we should probably have another discussion at Planning and Zoning Committee with the new Department of Transportation Director. And since apparently this has been tasked to him about how we can proactively plan roads in anticipation of development, which is something that our colleague Stuart Benson has been preaching forever, and I agree with him. So I think that might be the best way to go about further discussions. And I would be willing to happy to bring that up to Councilman Owen, as I'm vice chair of that committee. So thank you.
All right. Thank you all for your questions and spirited conversation. And Mr. Davis is going to remain in that seat as we talk about the Board of Zoning Adjustment, AKA BOZA, under Kentucky statute, local ordinance. They meet on the first and third Mondays. They are compensated $100 per meeting that they attend. Just want to point out that we've had 3 boards today where members make $100 a meeting, and not saying that that's not justified, I'm just pointing that out. And they have a maximum of 7 members, and so go ahead and take it from here.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, shifting to the Board of Zoning Adjustments, or BOZA, to save some words here. As you stated, they have 7 total members. They also serve 3-year terms. Like the Planning Commission, the members are required to meet continuing education requirements, which is 8 hours every 4 years. They are compensated $100 per public hearing. They don't have any subcommittees, so you can ignore that next line. There is a special provision in KRS 100 that allows Jeffersontown to have their own board, and they do. And so any variances or conditional use permits that are within the city of Jeffersontown boundaries goes to their board of adjustments, and does not come to our board. And so
Does that include CUPs?
it does, yeah, yes. So
So
conditional
those-
use permits, CUPs, and variances that are in Jeffersontown go to the Jeffersontown board, they don't go to ours. Yeah. So the duties of the Board of Zoning Adjustments is laid out in KRS 100. KRS 100 specifically keeps planning commissions and Board of Zoning Adjustments separate, so you can't have a group of people who serve as both. You can have 2 members who can serve on both, but you can't have one body that does all the functions. And so the Board of Zoning Adjustments, they're tasked with the conditional use permits, which some examples of a conditional use permit, like a short-term rental where the owner doesn't live in the property, they would be required to obtain a conditional use permit from the Board of Zoning Adjustments. A salvage yard in like an M3 district, mini warehouse in a C2. I mean, there's a lot of them. So those are examples of conditional use permits. Variances, so dimensional variances, so like like a setback or a height, those go before the Board of Zoning Adjustments. And then administrative reviews, which if a citizen feels like an official has made a wrongful determination about an interpretation or an application or something related to the Land Development Code, they can actually appeal that interpretation or whatever to the Board of Zoning Adjustments, and they have the authority to conduct a hearing to determine whether or not who was right in that situation. The BOZA typically
Would
meets the
they
first.
be appealing, I'm so sorry, are they appealing?
Like appeal a decision, yeah, like.
But the hearing is about the decision that they made.
Right. Yeah, correct. So like typically, so like,
You're appealing to the person that made the decision and saying you're wrong,
well,
right?
well, we handle the application, but the board handles that hearing. And so, like, if there was an appeal against the director's interpretation, I would have to show up and explain why I made that interpretation. The people would explain why, that interpretation is incorrect, and then BOZA would have the final say.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's okay. So BOZA typically meets the first and third Mondays of the month. In 2004, their average meeting lasted 4 hours and 33 minutes. They usually have between 10 and 15 cases on any given agenda. And unlike the most planning commissions, they make recommendations in terms of like zoning map amendments. All decisions are final with the Board of Zoning Adjustments, and so they don't make recommendations to legislative bodies. The decision is final. Those decisions can be appealed to court, but as far as like the process and who reviews those, they are final at the Board of Zoning Adjustments. And I forgot to mention, the Board of Zoning Adjustment members, they are appointed by the mayor, and those appointments come to Metro Council for final, reading as well. And they're all citizen members. There are no like de facto members like on the Planning Commission. They are all citizen appointees. And that's all that I have. Unless you have any questions.
Councilman Reed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when somebody is asking for a CUP, let's say, for example, maybe it's a business that wants to operate in a residential R4 area or something like that, they want a conditional use permit, there's actually a hearing where they come and they make a presentation? What is that process?
So when someone files a conditional use permit, it's similar to the zoning process in that there's a pre-application, there's a required neighborhood meeting, they file a formal application. Once they're docketed before the Board of Zoning Adjustments, then that person comes and gives a presentation about why they feel the use is, and the approval of the CUP is justified. And then if there's anyone that is present to speak in either support or opposition to that, they're allowed to do so. And then the Board of Zoning Adjustment typically makes a decision on that case that day.
That was going to be my next question. Do you make the decision while the applicant is there, or do you?
Right, yeah, no, and KRS requires Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Adjustments to make their decisions during public hearings. So they can't like go into a closed session, deliberate, make a decision, and then come back and tell them. They have to do all their deliberation and everything in front of, during the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
And just to kind of clarify, if I had a facility that I wanted to get a CUP in order to turn it into a short-term rental, I would go before BOZA. But to renew that short-term rental registration, that would be taken care of by the Planning Commission.
The Office of Planning.
Office of Planning.
Right, yeah. So we oversee the applications for both of those bodies, and so it gets a little confusing there. But yeah, with like a short-term rental, if you come in and you get a conditional use permit to operate that short-term rental, typically you have so many days after approval to get your license. And then each year, you don't have to go back to the Board of Zoning Adjustments. You can just renew your license with the Office of Planning.
Can you remind me, in the last presentation, when you were talking about the Planning Commission, that you said that they oversee rental registration? Did you say
No.
that?
We do not, so short-term rental licenses, our office oversees that. And so when you were asking about the fees that we collected, there's if you look at the bar graph in our annual report, you'll see there's one section that is short-term rental license fees that come into the Office of Planning, not necessarily the Planning Commission, so.
Gotcha. Thank you. Councilman Reed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Planning Commission, if somebody is denied an application, and then either the Metro Council or the full council denies an application for a development, they have to come back, they have to wait 2 years and come back with a new development plan. Is that similar to an application at BOZA? If a resident came in and was denied, is there a waiting period where they can come back, where they're supposed to come back after a certain amount of time and they can resubmit an application?
There is, and I can't remember if it's 1 year or 2 years. But there is a similar provision there, especially for conditional use permits. Now, they can request it be waived, like say I come in with a conditional use permit, gets denied by BOZA. I make changes, I can go back to BOZA and ask them to waive that time period. But yeah, there is a time period that's built in, and again, I apologize. It's either a year or 2 years with conditional use permits and variances. I can't remember which.
Is it common that they come back and they ask for you to waive that time period?
No, I honestly can't remember the last time we had a BOZA case where they came and requested that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, easy breezy. Thank you so very much for being here, and thank you to all of our presenters today. I think that we learned a lot, and I appreciate my committee members for being here, and I hope everyone has a great first day of school tomorrow, and we are adjourned.
Cheryl, let me log you off here.
Really?
We are so excited to be here today for Fat Friday, the Frankfurt Avenue Trolley Hop.
It's been 6 years since it's run, so we had to start from scratch to pull it back together. Are the stops on the railroad side of the street?
It should be on the right side of the street along Frankfurt.
We're already working out some kinks, which is what we kind of expected. This is where we've set up a park and ride for people who don't live in the neighborhood. They can come and park here, hop on the trolley.
So the trolley will be running from Melbourne Art Center to Brownsboro Road and looping back around to Frankfurt Avenue. That way riders will have the opportunity to shop with local businesses, stop at restaurants for food and drink specials, enjoy live entertainment and just all of the attractions that are happening today. Just a fun thing to do on a Friday evening with your family. But